Hmm. It's super interesting. And I think before we get into our topic today, Dr. Ross, some people may be like initially very skeptical of Christians and non-Christians alike of this idea of like UFOs being like maybe some supernatural entity or demonic presence or things like that. So how would you like kind of respond to that, like that initial skepticism entering a topic like this?
Well, I began quite skeptical. I had no real intention of pursuing the subject of UFOs, but I was an amateur astronomer before I became a professional astronomer and was the director of observations for the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada in Vancouver. And I said, hey, let's have a booth at the exhibition, the Pacific National Exhibition. Well, they put us right next to the astronomy or the Flying Saucer Club. So people would go to the Flying Saucer Club booth, and then they'd come by and say, "Hey, what do you think?" And that was the beginning. That started when I was 16 years of age, and from that point onward, wherever I went, I became the guy that had to process the UFO reports. And about 99% of what people reported to me as UFOs, I could explain as a natural phenomena, military activity, or a hoax. But after doing that for a couple of years, I realized there's a 1% residual which cannot be explained. And that's what really got me interested in pursuing this in some depth. And I wound up a few years ago writing a book on the subject, Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men, where I talk about this 1% residual database. And what's interesting is that you can demonstrate that these are real phenomena, but they violate the laws of physics, which is why we drew the conclusion we're dealing with non physical reality. And when I was at the University of Toronto, I briefly had Carl Sagan as a professor, and he was extremely dismissive of UFOs. But he had a worldview that didn't allow for the existence of non physical reality. For him, all reality was a physical. Sorry about that. I got that muted now. Um, he didn't believe in non physical reality, but as a Christian, I did believe that indeed God has created two kinds of intelligent life. We human beings that are constrained by the physics of the universe, and angels that are not so constrained. And what I notice is that there's about 2,000 well documented cases of these UFOs going through the atmosphere where you got multiple observers that are able to track it. So you can actually determine the velocity of entry where they crash into the earth and they leave a crater. And what's interesting is when they go through the atmosphere, you can track that they're moving at velocities between 5,000 and 25,000 miles per hour. And yet none of the observers ever record a sonic boom or record seeing heat friction behind the UFO. If it's a physical craft, you will get heat friction and you will get a sonic boom. And we don't see that. And if you go to the crash site, there's no debris, there's no artifacts. If it was a physical object crashing into the earth, there would be debris and there would be artifacts. But we know it's real because you actually see a crater where the ground is depressed by as much as a foot. If there's snow, the snow in the crater area is melted and the vegetation is consistently damaged. So something real is happening, but it's not physical. It violates the laws of physics. And you actually see that in a lot of the new reports that have been coming out that the government has been released. Many of them can be explained as natural phenomena, like pieces of paint being chipped off the aircraft. But there's other cases where it falls in this category, something real, but is violating the laws of physics. For example, where you see the object making a sharp right angle turn at 18,000 miles per hour. No physical object can withstand that g force, and yet this is what we observe.